All right, it is time to kick off our webinar, AI for Student Success. I am so glad you all could join me. My name is Courtney Gallion, and I wanted to first introduce myself and tell you a little bit about me and my background and why I'm giving this webinar today. So I spent 8 years in public education. And I love teaching. I love the kids. I love what I did. I love getting up every day. But it became very, very difficult to continue with that career and still have a family. So I knew that being in education long term wasn't for me. But I'm still very, very passionate about education. And I love helping students. So I joined Bolu School as their operations and marketing director. And that gave me the opportunity to continue to help students and to present this webinar for you today. Over the last few months, I have personally become very interested in AI and how it can help everybody, particularly teachers and students, because at the end of the day, education is my passion. So as soon as ChatGPT became widely available, I started playing with it. I started thinking, how can we use this to make education better? So I've done a lot of experimenting and a lot of tests over the last few months. And I've come here to kind of show you some of my findings and what I've found on how AI can help our kids be more successful in the classroom, because that's ultimately what I'm about. So our agenda for today in this webinar, we are going to talk about these things. What is AI? Why are we having this discussion in this webinar now? What AI tools are available to our students and our teachers to use, how they can use it, what prompt engineering is, and the future of AI both in and out of the classroom. I think maybe we've all realized this, but if not, it's worth saying. AI is the future. Embracing and understanding it now is the key to future success. So this is obviously a very, well, not necessarily new, but it's an emerging technology. They're coming out with amazing, very interactive, very useful tools every single day. So our kids are going to need to know how to operate these tools and how to use these tools for their benefit to be successful in their future. And it's not going to be an impressive skill. It's going to be a required skill for them. So what is AI? It stands for artificial intelligence. And whether you realize it or not, we've been using AI for years. Maps and GPS use AI. They track your location via satellite. And oftentimes when we're using GPS, they can even suggest the best route, or it might know that you want to avoid tolls, and it can adapt to your preferences. And that's really what AI, that's the power that is behind it, and that's what it's about. Anything that uses facial recognition is a form of AI. So your laptop, when you flip that screen up and it says, in my case, welcome, Courtney, it's using artificial intelligence to scan my face. And I don't look the same every day, but it can take all of these points of reference and recognize that it's me. One of the ways that we use it every day that we probably don't even think about is text editors and autocorrect. So on your cell phone, when you're typing a message and something autocorrects, it's not only guessing what word you meant to use, but it's pulling from all of the past words that you've used in your text message to guess what you most likely mean. And the other really common way that we see AI and we interact with it is through the recommendations that we get on a lot of platforms. So if you're on Amazon, Amazon very frequently suggests products, and it uses an algorithm that's based on AI or that is generated from AI, because it tracks everything that you've purchased, everything that you've searched, and it makes inferences about what you might like to buy in the future. And one of the biggest differentiating factors between any algorithm and between AI is the inference aspect of it. It uses past data to make guesses and suggestions for you in the future. And that's really one of the big things that AI is. So how does it work? And we have two explanations here. And I know this is a lot to read. I generally believe that you should not put this much text on a slide, but this is something that I think bears repeating that I really and truly wanted to illustrate for you. So when I was creating this presentation, I was trying to explain, how does ChatGPT, for instance, work? So I thought, why don't I ask ChatGPT to explain it to me? How better to illustrate it? So the first prompt, I just simply asked ChatGPT, how do you work? And this is the explanation that it gave me. And I'll give you some highlights, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. ChatGPT generates responses using neural language processing and machine learning techniques. It's been trained on a large corpus of text data and is designed to understand natural language and patterns in language. When a user inputs a question or statement, ChatGPT uses a deep neural network to analyze the input and generate a response. It considers various factors such as context, syntax, grammar, and semantics of the input before generating a response. So, as you can clearly see from this initial response, that is a very technical explanation. That has a lot of what we call 5-point words. That's what I call them in the classroom, which just indicates a high technical level vocabulary. It uses words that and concepts that the layperson might not be familiar. So this explanation is accurate, but it's not necessarily accessible to every reader. So once I read this, I thought, okay, that's correct and it's helpful, but I'd really like to see an explanation that simplifies the text significantly. So I asked ChatGPT, I said, can you explain to me how you work, but explain it to me as if I were a fifth grader? So then it came up with this response. ChatGPT is actually a type of program called an AI. That stands for artificial intelligence. And what it does can talk with people like you and me. Now, ChatGPT is special because it's really good at understanding what people are saying and coming up with good responses. It does that by using something called machine learning. That means it has been taught lots of examples of what people might say and how to respond to them. And the more it talks with people, the better it gets. So basically, ChatGPT is like a super smart computer friend that you can talk to. So you can clearly see how this is a much more simplified and accessible explanation. And that's one of the most powerful tools in the AI toolbox is that it can truly recognize an audience and talk to that audience. And you might be wondering why I'm telling you this right in the beginning of our presentation. And it's because this aspect of AI is very, very, very powerful for academics. So if a child is asking a question, if they get the first answer, they're not going to understand it. They're not going to be able to get a lot of value from that first answer. But that second answer, a child could say, okay, that makes sense. I get it. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about today is how to use this to make all of their education more accessible. So why now? We are experiencing a massive surge of AI technology advancement. There is a brand new AI program out every single day. The one that most people are familiar with, I think, at this point, is ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is what's called a generative AI. It's based on a large language model. And what that means is before they rolled it out to the public, OpenAI, put in tons and tons and tons and tons of human written input to this AI to teach it how to communicate with other humans. So that's why it's called a large language model. It has a large language bank to pull from. And what it can do is output text in any form, including prose, poetry, lists, and even computer code. And that's super useful. And we're going to go through and see some examples of what ChatGPT can do for us in terms of generative AI. But there's also a couple of other things that I just want to touch on that AI can do that can be very useful to students in the classroom. And these are just each of these tools is just one example of the category that we're featuring here. So DALL-E 2 is a creation of the same company, OpenAI, that came up with ChatGPT. What they do is image creation. So it takes texts and turns them into computer graphics in the form of images, photos, drawings, and more. It's incredibly powerful. And a lot of the photos a lot of the artwork, we'll say, that it outputs is incredibly beautiful and very impressive. Lumed 5 creates videos using a drag and drop interface. We probably all know the majority of the internet is interacting via video. And they're watching TikTok videos, they're watching Instagram reels, Facebook reels, YouTube videos. Video content is really the largest portion of how people are interacting on it. And being able to create it easily with text input and drag and drop software is incredibly powerful, because really good videos are difficult to create unless it's just like this webinar a human being sitting in a chair talking to a camera, or a single person, doing a makeup tutorial or giving you their opinion. Videos can be very costly and time consuming and expensive to create. So AI video tools allow you to do that or create a lot of those same types of videos without having to actually film people doing activities in different locations. Another really big benefit is music creation. And SoundDraw is just one of a number of tools that are available to you to create music. And the biggest draw here is that all of the music that you create with AI is royalty free. So what that means is that if you're putting music in a video, a presentation, and you want to publish that on the internet, if that song is copyrighted, you can't legally do that. So even if it's just you want to put maybe your high school English presentation on YouTube, if you use a song in that presentation that was created by an artist, YouTube is not going to let you post that video because you don't own the copyright to it. With AI music generation, copyright never comes into effect. So you can create songs in different types of music and use it completely royalty free in whatever capacity. A lot of the music creation software now will also allow you not only to create the music, but to input lyrics that are sung in the style or the gender or the genre of the person that you are wanting. So if you want a male country singer to sing your lyrics, all you have to do is type in male country singer, type in your lyrics, and it will create that music for you. It's incredibly powerful. So, AI in education, that's why we're here. What we're going to cover, we are going to talk about AI as a tool to help you further your education. We're going to talk about how it can guide your studies, how it can explain concepts, generate ideas, find resources, create outlines and frameworks, transform data, and we're going to talk about what prompt engineering is and how to do it. What we're not going to cover is AI as a cheat code, because your teachers are getting pretty good at figuring out what was created with AI and what was created by an actual human. We're not going to cover how to use AI to cheat the system. Relying on AI to do your work for you in any capacity is considered cheating. Additionally, it's still in its, especially with the chatbots like ChatGPT, this technology is still in its infancy. So that means it can be wildly unreliable if the user of the technology is not competent and knowledgeable. So the first thing that AI can do is guide your studies. When you are studying for a big test or a big class, or if you're studying a lot of concepts and it's really difficult, it can be tough to know where to start, how to manage your time, how to balance it. And one of the great things that AI can do is create a plan for you. So I'm going to show you one of the things that AI can do in terms of your study plans. So I'm going to share a different screen. So I asked ChatGPT, I said, give me a 12-week study plan for the AP US History exam. This is what it spit out. As an AI language model, I do not have personal experience with an AP US History exam, but below is a generic 12-week study plan that could be followed by you. Okay, so one of the things that ChatGPT is always going to say is, I don't have experience with this because I'm an AI language model. We know. But if we look at this study plan, it really is a very solid breakdown of what a student could study with 12 weeks until their exam. So it's the week number 1, it tells you the introduction, week 3 to 4, colonial America, 5 to 6, the Revolutionary Era, 7 to 8, early US history, 9 to 10, antebellum America, and 11 to 12, Civil War and Reconstruction. And I will tell you that that pretty much covers all of the topics that you're going to find on the AP US history test. It also says here at the bottom, throughout the study period, practice answering sample AP US history exam questions and work on developing strong writing analysis skills. Additionally, participate in review sessions and seek out resources to supplement your study. So it's not only giving you a very concise, very strict calendar of what you should study for every week. And you can tell it 12 weeks, 20 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever your time frame is for studying for a test, and it will adapt accordingly. But it's also giving you some really solid tips on what you should be studying. So this brings me to my second point. Can you tell me what types of questions are on the AP US history test and how I should study them? So here I'm asking a specific question about what types of questions I'm likely to encounter in the test. So not just what I should study for in terms of concepts, but how I should study in terms of questions. So again, it's got your disclaimer. As an AI language model, I don't have personal experience with the test. But then it goes into great detail about the types of questions that you're going to see on this test, and gives you some tips on how you should respond or how you should study those types of questions. One second, I'm going to go back to our presentation. And throughout this webinar, I'm going to toggle from my presentation to some actual prompts and some actual interactions that I've had with ChatGPT to come up with to you about today. It can generate practice questions for you, and it can also generate examples. So if continuing with the AP history, if one of the types of questions on the AP history exam is what's called a document-based question. And a document-based question is you have to read a document and answer questions about it. I know, so surprising. But if you ask ChatGPT, could you give me some really good examples of document-based questions answers, it would be able to do that as well. So you could study answers that were already deemed to be really good. Explaining difficult concepts. My experience in the classroom, I know that when students are learning a new concept, many times they need it explained in a variety of different ways. When you're relying on a single educator, that can be difficult. because every teacher has the way that they are used to explaining a concept or they found success explaining a concept. And so sometimes it can be challenging to come up with different ways to explain the same concept so that your students understand. And this is one of the things that ChatGPT is very, very good at, is tailoring their responses to a specific target audience. So if you remember during the first slide, or not the first slide, but earlier in the presentation where I showed you side by side, I asked ChatGPT a question, very general question. It was, explain to me how you work. And it was super technical. So I asked the same question and I said, explain it to me. I'm a fifth grader. And it gave me a much simpler breakdown of that same answer. And the way that we can look at this for education is this. So if a student is at home and reading or doing a math problem and struggling with the concept, he or she can go onto ChatGPT and say, explain this concept to me. It is particularly useful, this element is particularly useful in math. So you could tell ChatGPT, explain the Pythagorean theorem to me, and it would. And if your student is still having a hard time with that explanation, they could say, explain the Pythagorean theorem to me like I'm a third grader. And ChatGPT would revise its response and make it even more simple so that that student can at least build that foundation and begin to understand that concept so they can go from that point forward. And again, with particularly math here, it can break it down into steps. So let's say I'm at home, I have homework, I'm doing an equation, and I don't know how to solve this equation. I can put it into ChatGPT and say, please explain to me the steps needed to solve this equation. And it will not only help the student solve it, but it will very clearly explain, first we did this, then we did this, then we did that, then we did this, then we solved for X, and the answer is C. So students can get a very clear, very simple explanation of these multi-step problems and how to solve them. So when they have a similar problem on the next question, they can reference back to their chat that they had with their AI and say, okay, I get it. I do this first, next, this next, this next, and then they can solve their own problems from that way. Rating and evaluating work is the next thing they can do. So in terms of writing, when students are writing essays, they can copy and paste their entire essay into ChatGPT and have it edit spelling and grammar for them. So their prompt would say, could you edit the spelling and grammar to make this essay clearer? Paste the essay, hit enter, and it will do it for you. It can also provide a letter grade. Now, obviously, ChatGPT cannot go back to your teacher's rubric and figure out exactly what they're looking for, but it can more or less read your work, evaluate it, and decide how good it is on a scale of 8 out. It can also provide deep, constructive feedback on concepts, structure, idea organization that will help you make your essays and your written word considerably better. The most powerful, in my mind, thing that many of these chatbot programs can do is idea generation. So sometimes when we're writing papers or projects or coming up with science fair projects, even, it can be hard to think of and decide on a topic. So one of the key features that AI offers is brainstorming, and brainstorming what I call with parameters. So if I say have to write an essay for my English class on how adversity affects me, you can go into ChatGPT and say, can you come up with some ideas for an essay about how adversity affects people? And it will come up with a relatively long list of ideas. So the student can then read that list and see which of those ideas and which of those topics resonates with them, what they feel comfortable writing about, and what they might have ideas to write about. It can also do the inverse and narrow ideas. So if you have a ton of ideas, you can say, ChatGPT, here are all of my ideas. Which ones have the most evidence or have the most resources? And I phrased that way for a reason, because if you say, which one should I write about? It's going to say, I'm an AI language model. I don't have an opinion. So you have to remember, anytime you're engaging with any AI, you cannot ever expect it to answer an opinion question. You have to phrase the question in such a way that it gives you an evidence-based answer. So asking, which of the following topics has the most available resources will allow you to then examine those resources and make a decision about what you do. And that brings me to our next topic, which is finding resources. When we're looking for resources, and I say we, teachers, students, parents, human beings that use the internet, when we Google things, when we look up things on the internet, Google doesn't really decide whether or not the source is biased or relevant or scientific. It just says, here's all the sources that fit your query. This is our best guess of what you're looking for. And a lot of times, as I'm sure you're aware, if you've ever done an internet search before, a lot of those search results are not going to be relevant. They're not going to be what you're looking for. They're going to be biased, opinionated, not scientific enough, especially if you're using this for any kind of academic work or any kind of academic paper. So ChatGPT can act as a really strong, really discerning search algorithm. If you're looking for, say, articles about mitochondrial DNA, and you're in AP biology in high school, you don't want a children's book on DNA. You don't want some random blogger's article on what they think DNA is all about. You want something that is science-backed, credible, and citable. What you can do with many of these AI programs and ChatGPT in particular is narrow it down to a type of article that you're looking for. So if you say, I want articles on mitochondrial DNA, please find them for me. It's going to give you a whole bunch of results. And it's not going to be very, very filtered. But if you say, find me articles from medical journals on mitochondrial DNA, it will be able to do that far more effectively than Google, because ChatGPT, I don't want to say it can think, but it kind of can a little bit better than any search engine, and it can filter your searches a lot more. One of the other things that it can do, if you are writing a paper or an article and you run out of ideas, or you have an idea, but you need to find support, you can say, hey, ChatGPT, I'm writing an article that is anti-death penalty. Can you find me some internet sources that support this point? And the answer is yes, it can. And it will. Then, of course, it's up to you to read those articles and determine whether or not they're A, valid, B, credible, and C, useful to you in your paper. It can create outlines and frameworks and organize ideas into logical order. So I'm going to stop sharing my presentation for just a second and show you the outline that I had ChatGPT create for me. So I said to ChatGPT, write an outline for a 6-paragraph speech in favor of the death penalty. So this would be a middle high school speech and debate assignment, for example. And I want to note a couple of things that I told this. I said a 6-paragraph speech. It's important, if you're asking for an outline, to say how long you want it to be. Because if you just give it a general outline, you might either get something that's 2 paragraphs, or you might get something that's 15 pages. You have to remember that you have to be very specific and set the parameters for exactly what you want it to do. So I said, write an outline for a 6-paragraph speech in favor of the death penalty. And notice I didn't say about the death penalty. You have to be very, very specific when talking to an AI, just the same way that you would be specific if you were talking to a human being. So I said, in favor of the death penalty. So that way I know that the outline that it's going to give me is going to contain points only on the side that I have chosen to debate about. If we look at this article, if we look at this outline, it says introduction, attention getter, background, thesis statement. Perfect intro. I've taught writing for a number of years. That is exactly how you would want an introduction sound. We have our 4 supporting paragraphs: justice for victims and their families, deterrence and prevention of crime, alternatives to the death penalty, and the cost of keeping criminals alive. Those are all arguments for the death penalty. And then it tells you under each of those points exactly what you should write about in that outline. So the cost of keeping criminals alive, for example, discuss the cost of keeping a criminal in prison, highlight the impact on taxpayers, discuss how the money saved could be used. So it is telling you exactly what you should write about and where you should look for information. So this is, as you can see, an incredibly powerful tool. It also tells you, basically walks you through how to write the conclusion, summarize the main arguments in support of the death penalty, and with a call to action urging the audience to support the death penalty as a necessary form of justice. That is exactly how you would format a competitive speech if you were in a speech and debate scenario and asked to write an article about the death penalty. And I will say, I do not have any opinions regarding this topic. I just know that this is a very common topic that students will encounter in a speech and debate scenario. It's a really good topic to kind of start teaching kids about how to format and create your speeches, because there's a lot of data, there's a lot of opinions, there's just a lot of resources in the world that students can draw from for this topic. So it's a very commonly used topic in speech and debate. So here. Transforming data is another really impressive thing that a lot of AIs can do. I know ChatGPT in particular can create tables as well as organize and interpret data. So if students have Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets and they need to translate them into bar charts or pie charts, graphs, they can upload that data or that spreadsheet and ask ChatGPT, can you explain this data, or can you represent this data in a bar graph, line graph, pie chart, whatsoever. Also, if students are in a data situation where they're analyzing data and maybe they need some additional information or additional data, they can ask ChatGPT, hey, find me some additional data to support this point, and it will search the web and deliver some resources and results that will give students that data. So, prompt engineering. That is going to be an absolutely essential skill that our kids will need to have. What is it? Prompt engineering is simply the way that we talk to these AI programs. So how we phrase things, the parameters that we input, the details that we include, it's all part of the science of prompt engineering. You might be asking, why should I learn it? Or why should my kid learn it? And I will say it is because this is going to be a skill in the next 10 years that is as essential as the ability to Google things or the ability to use a search engine. And most of us don't think of the ability to use Google or the ability to use any search engine as a skill, but it really is. When I watched my 73-year-old father attempt to Google things, it's maddening because he doesn't really know how to do it. He's never been able or learned how to talk to a search engine or to a computer in the way that will get him the best results. So you and I think that that's very Simple, very innate almost. And prompt engineering is going to be that for our kids. They're going to need to be able to communicate with AI programs seamlessly and quickly. So how can you learn it? Well, simple answer, same way you learn anything else. If you're brand new and you've never used any AI tools before and you want to get started, my best recommendation is just go to YouTube and type prompt engineering or how to talk to ChatGPT or how to talk to Bard or how to talk to Photor, which is an image generation service that I use. And you can watch a quick video that will give you some basic tips and tricks on how you should phrase your prompts so that you get the best output and you get the output that you're looking for. Can you improve your skills? The same way that you improve any skill, anything you ever try to learn, and that's practice. The more you practice, the better that you'll get. Because when you put in anything in an AI program and you get output that you aren't necessarily super happy with, the next thing that you can do is you can think, okay, if I said this and I got this, I tweak that to get a slightly more desirable result. And you can use the next box or next prompt box to alter your query or alter your prompt so that you get an even better response the next time. And you can keep doing that over and over and over again until you get the results you want. Just like if you're learning how to play soccer, you hit ball after ball after ball into the net, you learn how to do it so that it's natural. Prompt engineering is a skill that is no different from any other skill that we ever are going to use. And that's why I'm encouraging all students to start using this technology, start practicing it, start in any way that you can incorporate this into your education, into your life, into your creative endeavors. You could even, if you had a kid that was an amazing artist, you could ask any of your AI programs or ChatGPT, say, hey, what could I draw that's really crazy and imaginative? Or what could I draw that's a fantasy illustration for a novel that I'm thinking of? And it could provide you with suggestions. Are those suggestions going to be the best? Maybe yes, maybe no. But it allows students to continue to practice talking to the AI and using it to generate ideas and work with them on things that they're already really passionate about. So this is kind of on the why do we need to learn it. ChatGPT has been on the market for only 5 months. It's hard to believe, right? And in that 5 months, they have gotten to a 100 million user number. And that is active monthly users. That is 100 million people in this world are using ChatGPT at least once a month to do something. That represents the fastest adoption of any technology in history by far. There has never, ever been a technology introduced that was adopted by so many people so quickly. So what that can tell us about the future, this ain't going away. If 100 million people in 5 months are already like using this and loving it and continuing to use it, it's going to be here to stay. It's going to evolve. It's going to become a necessary technology that we're all going to have to use. And then ChatGPT has had over 1.6 billion distinct users since its launch. Active monthly users and distinct users are slightly different. Active monthly users are people that use the program at least once per month, but distinct users represent people that maybe have only used it once or twice. 1.6 billion people have already at least tried to use this technology, or at least played with it or experimented with it. And that represents about 1 in 4.5, 1 in 4 people will say on the planet. So 25% of our entire planet has at least tried this technology in the 5 months since it's been. That is an incredible, staggering number. Never in history has any technology ever been adopted and embraced this fast. It can be a little bit scary. It represents a whole new way that we are interacting with computers and the internet. But it's absolutely going to be necessary that we teach our kids how to use this and how to be responsible users. AI largely pulls its source information from the internet. As we know, not everything on the internet is true or factual or correct. So it's on us as parents and teachers to teach our kids how to use this technology responsibly and how to incorporate their critical thinking skills so that when they are using this technology, they can decide whether or not the answers that it's giving them are correct, whether they have bias, whether they're useful or relevant or not. That's why I wanted to come talk to you guys today and do this webinar. I think it's so important that we get ahead of it. We help our kids learn how to use this technology. We know how to get them to use it responsibly and how it can help them benefit their education and their lives.